Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends. I recently released my Dirty Dozen video and showed Mephiston as a new feature in the top 30, courtesy of his two recent buffs. With the benefit of a few days, I realized that I owe Mephiston an apology. Mephiston, I'm sorry. In the words of my niece, I was not familiar with your game. Let me explain. Mephiston's buffs were relatively small print changes at the end of the patch notes for the last couple of patches, and you would be forgiven for missing it. Mephiston first gained the Rapid Assault trait, and then had his passive tweaked to allow it to benefit from buffs. The implications of this were actually pretty big, and I noticed that all of a sudden Mephiston was really strong, particularly in PvP, whether that's Arena, Tournament Arena, or Guild War. So I scored him upwards and then was having a discussion on Discord, which got me thinking a little bit. Hang on a second, Mephiston has all of the required traits to do well in the Custodes team. Have I been sleeping on him? Let's take a quick sidestep and look at the Custodes team. I've talked about them a lot in my recent videos and have these 5 characters listed as the team. The team revolves around giving an additional hit to characters with non-normal attacks, and in that sense, Karn and Carrion are the big winners and damage dealers. The character I was least happy with in this team was Ragnar. Sure, he has a powerful active ability in Warhowl, but he doesn't really maximize the strengths of the team. It is why I think it's important to make the distinction between this team and the multi-hit team. The way you are trying to build each team is just completely different. You want lots of hits and buffers for the multi-hit team, whereas you want high non-attack damage for the Custodes team. Anyway, I digress. Mephiston has a lot of the desired traits for this team. He has Rapid Assault, so benefits from Dante, and he has a non-normal attack passive ability that does okay damage and now, crucially, can be buffed. One of the other appeals over Ragnar is that he fulfills a niche this team previously struggled with. That is to say, he can kill non-boss spawns. You want this team to be attacking the boss basically all the time, and Mephiston's passive gives you an extra free bit of splash damage to tidy the battlefield up. Anyway, I can wax lyrical about this character all I want, but the proof is in the pudding, so let's take a look at some raid gameplay. You may or may not know that the test build I get access to often has different bosses and maps to the current game, so as this video is being recorded, these are the bosses on offer. Sadly, the only reasonable option to put the Custodes team against here is Call, since the extra hits from Mephiston will trigger Ghazghkull's passive ability, Prophets of Gork and Mork. Let's take a look at how Mephiston performs alongside Ragnar at the same level. On turn 2, you can see the point I was making earlier about Mephiston killing some spawns. As the fight progresses, you can hopefully appreciate the point I've made in the past, where you can see that Call's AI is fixed depending on the opening that he does. You'll see identical movement and boss placement in both fights after Call opens with his beam on turn 1. I'll stay quiet for a little bit so that you can enjoy the replays and comparisons side by side. At the end, you can see that the Ragnar version of the team outperforms the Mephiston version by about 100k at max settings. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Nandi, you just spent the first few minutes of this video talking about replacing Ragnar. That is a fair comment, but I want to highlight 2 things. Ragnar's usefulness falls very quickly with increasing boss rarity, as boss armor reduces Ragnar's damage output. Conversely, Mephiston's increases since psychic damage has 100% pierce and doesn't care about boss armor. So if we had the same fight but against a legendary 5 call rather than a legendary 1 call, I suspect Mephiston's output would be higher. Unfortunately, there is no Riptide available for me to showcase and test on the test build at the moment. The Riptide's block chances increase whenever it uses Nova Shield, and this is something that Mephiston works around because psychic damage cannot be blocked. The Riptide also has several spawns in the form of Fire Warriors and Stealth Suits that Mephiston can help to clear. To summarize or give you a key takeaway message from all this, Mephiston is usable in the Custodes team and will likely be tech that sometimes wins depending on the boss map and rarity. In the longer term, I hope that this example shows that of all of the characters in the Custodes team, Ragnar's place is the most likely to be considered a flex slot, simply because he doesn't gel with what the rest of the team is trying to do. Anyway, that was a log segment talking about Mephiston on the Custodes team. It hopefully doesn't need to be said that he is also a useful part of the Psyker team and can add stacks to the Neurothrope. If I had to rescore Mephiston, this is probably how I would do it. To remind you of how I end up with my final score on the Dirty Dozen, I take an average of the character's performance against all of the bosses, and that feeds into the raid score before adding the horde mode and war scores to give a combined total score. Tournament Arena isn't running at the moment, but I also wanted to just quickly showcase how good Mephiston's passive and overall damage is with the new buffs. Here I'm taking a gold 3 Mephiston into this arena battle against a full diamond 3 enemy lineup. Mephiston's passive is sitting at level 40. You can see that with the psychic unblockable damage, Mephiston really punches above his weight and does most of the heavy lifting for our team. By the time Karn and Carrion have to act, the enemies are on just a sliver of health, and I wouldn't be surprised to learn that a lot of the top players in Tournament Arena use him or the Blood Angels faction. Mephiston is already the core of one of my newer war offense teams. In fact, one of my guildmates, AJR Superstar, came in 4th in the most recent Tournament Arena, using the Blood Angels faction, and spoke of the virtues of Mephiston. While we're talking about Mephiston, we can spend a little bit of time talking about his relic, Vitarus, and how to maximize its damage. The easiest way to think about it is as a fire on-off switch. If Vitarus turns off the fire, you do a bit of bonus damage on your hits. In an ideal world, you want Mephiston's passive to turn off the fire and therefore benefit from the bonus hits and damage from Trajan's passive. Here is an example of how it works against Call. In this clip, you can see that if even a single hex underneath the boss is on fire, then Vitarus triggers, extinguishing the fire and dealing bonus damage. Then, when Vitarus triggers again, it applies the fire hex effect to all of the boss's multi-hex profile. The synergy should hopefully be obvious with the Forge Fiend, who applies the fire hex effect and also deals damage to enemies who are already on fire hexes. A final note on 2 other characters that I have seen players talking about within the framework of the Custodes team. Vitruvius and Thoriad both give additional hits to the team, but the trouble with them is that they have a damage cap and therefore aren't able to maximize the potential of Carrion in particular, whose passive ability can deal upwards of 100,000 damage in a single turn. I've left on screen the math slide that I used to illustrate this point in the past. Okay, that's all I've got for this one. An apology to Mephiston backed up with some evidence and analysis. Hopefully it was useful. Thanks as always to my Patreons for their support, and bye for now.
Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!